stories, the editorial content is clean, sound. Though once in a while, they do veer off. The president, they said, Tinubu orders Shetima and governors. The president is not ordering Tinubu, he's not ordering Shetima, he's not ordering governors. It's not. I mean, if he asks if you're looking for...
Can he order the government?
He can't. So he's not ordering Shetima, and that's military terminology. So I think that's perhaps the only thing. But again, to just draw attention to the fact that when you are working on palliatives, because we have had conversations on this on Good Morning Nigeria, remember, it is not only persons who are in the formal economy, persons who are formally employed that are impacted by the removal of fuel subsidy. You have millions, tens of millions of MSMEs. You have persons who are self-employed. You have persons who are unemployed. What gets to them? And we must get away from all these cash handouts that are an avenue for deepening poverty and so on and so forth. Happily, in one of our conversations, we had Dr. Umar Bindri. He was the national coordinator of the Social Investment Program. And he said that time had come for us to begin to introduce technology into all of this. Because some of the end power, end health, and all of those things that happened in the previous administration, there seemed to have been a lacuna in properly identifying the beneficiaries and tracking them. Because it was said that there were some persons who were in employment who were still participating or had become beneficiaries of the end power and so on and so forth. So once you have a regime of cash handouts, then forget it. It just goes. And one of the ways to say, look, if we have borrowed $800 million from the World Bank, we know that the terms of the borrowing will have to be adhered to. But if there is need to alter those terms, why not? You reapply to the creditor, in this case the World Bank, to say, we're not going to be giving out 5,000 naira to the so-called poorest of the poor. You give them 5,000, you were giving them 5,000 naira, or whatever amount you were giving to them, conditional cash transfer years ago, trader money and whatever, and so on and so forth. And yet, population of multidimensionally poor Nigerians, 133 million. So what do you do to actually ensure that comes up? There are many avenues. A number of these things are interrelated. Multiple taxes for all kinds of persons, the tariffs that people pay, either for electricity or otherwise, your out-of-pocket expenses for your healthcare needs. These are the things that drive people crazy. Yeah. The school fees that you pay, whether in primary or in some cases in public schools. What are the measures that you can use? Professional groups. What are the things that you can do? If you say everybody just go home and lick your wounds or take the heat from the fuel subsidy removal, people will be groaning. You will find poverty will escalate, misery will escalate. So the governance, again, we should thank the president for what he did. If you recall, there were at least 2 meetings that were held at the Villa between officials of the federal government.
Very prompt meetings.
Yes, prompt officials of the federal government and the trade unions. And I asked the question, after each of those 2 meetings, where are the governors? Because they couldn't be reaching, those meetings could not be reaching an agreement that will be implemented across the 3 tiers of government. Where were the governors? So happily, the president has met with the governors. The forum, of course, of governors is what they used, and now he's pushed the task to the National Economic Council, which is chaired by the vice president. So let's see how things work out.
I think that because of the exclusivity of the petrol business thing, you know, government seems to come out, central government, now we're talking about the federal government, to take the initiative concerning when fuel prices raised and there is agitation here and there. But at the end of the day, as Kingsley just said, the governors, the local government chairman are really people who are closest to the grassroots. You understand? This, okay, we are talking about salaries and all that now. How many people are really in the bureaucracy, whether they're in the states or the federal government employed? How many compared to the number of Nigerians that are affected? So at the end of the day, what you want to do really is to clip the wings of an unfriendly business environment so that enterprise can flow freely and everybody will be happy at the end of the day.
I just, sorry, Juma, you were not around yesterday when Kieran and I that were on say, we were talking about perhaps what we refer to as a knee-jerk response of at least 2 state governments slashing
days of work.
Working days from 5 to 3. Just to add that, look, that is unhelpful. I remember I asked the question yesterday, will teachers also be going to work only 3 times in a week? For an economy that is prostrate, for you to get up, be walking and be running and catch up with your development agenda, you cannot afford not to walk around the clock. In this country, we seem to have forgotten. I mean, for persons who are much younger, they will not remember. In this country, our government officials used to go to work on Saturdays and close by 12. That stopped around 76 or 76, 77, I can't quite remember now. They used to go to work on Saturdays. And they would say, look, we needed to be like the rest of the world because all money was coming in. So that Saturday now is party, party, party.
One of the reasons ECN worked, Electricity Corporation of Nigeria, was that the workers were very diligent. Sunday, Saturday, you saw them there. But where I live, on Sunday, you might not find the workers to tell them that one feeder cable is not working well. Yet they have reasonably privatized. Where are we headed?
What?
Darkness. Chukudi.
Not so, Kingsley. Chukudi, thank you so much for coming.
You always excite me.
We'll take a break. When we come back, our conversation will begin to stay.
Our administration will govern you only on your behalf, but never rule over you. We shall consult and dialogue, but never dictate. We shall reach out to all, but never put down a single person for holding views contrary to our own.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
Your skill is key to your professional growth in the competitive broadcast media industry. Take advantage of the following programs specially packaged by NTA Television College Jaws to upgrade your skill. Marketing in the era of digital broadcast. Date 13th June to 23rd June 2023, 2 weeks. Drama Production Workshop. Date 3rd July to 21st July 2023, 3 weeks. Intermediate Online News Reporting Skills. Date 24th July to 11th August 2023, 3 weeks. The course fee for the 2-week course is 120,000 Naira, while the fee for the 3-week course is 150,000 Naira only. Accommodation inclusive. All courses will hold at NTA Television College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jaws. For further inquiries, please call 0803-079-5335 or 0806-980-9807. NTA Television College Jaws, training you to be the best you want to be. Registrar Announcer.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and as a prompt for our conversation on merging multiple exchange rates, let's take a look at this package put together by Abdulsalam Jibril.
Multiple exchange rate in Nigeria has remained a source of concern, with many experts calling on the Central Bank of Nigeria to address the challenge of multiple exchange rate windows in order to improve the inflow of foreign investments and diaspora remittances. According to the World Bank's April 2023 Macro Poverty Outlook for Nigeria, the Washington lender advised the federal government to unify the nation's multiple exchange rate windows and carry out a number of other reforms to strengthen the economy and restore macroeconomic stability. Over the years, some analysts have warned that the country's multiple exchange rate is harmful as it worsens future debt service payments and increases the risks of debt distress. In a significant policy shift, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in his inaugural speech, declared his government's decision to unify the exchange rates, replacing the previous multiple exchange rates regime. He highlighted the importance of a unified exchange rate and emphasized the need to redirect funds towards meaningful investments.
The central bank must work towards a unified exchange rate. This will direct the fund from arbitrage to meaningful investment and the plant and equipment, jobs that are that will power the real economy.
While many experts commend the policy shift of the president, they pointed out that for Nigeria to attempt a unification of exchange rates, it must address the fundamental issue of foreign exchange availability. Now, what mechanisms are needed to put in place for the effective implementation of the unification of the exchange rate, and what effects will it have on the common man? These and more will form the crux of discussions as guests speak to merging multiple exchange rates in Nigeria shortly.
Thank you very much, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that background. We have with us in the studios at least three guests, and would like to welcome the former director of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Muhammad Ali Baba. Muhammad, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Also here with us in the studio is an economist and finance expert, Mohammed Inu Ashew. Inu Ashew, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Also with us in the studio this morning is a regular, Professor Uche Waleke, a professor of finance and capital markets, Nasarawa State University. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria.
Well,
all right.
We have our Zoom is not ready yet.
Yeah, if we have the Zoom connection, we'll get another guest who will be joining us from Lagos, again, a regular and Good Morning Nigeria. Gentlemen, it appears that for the first time we are hearing from the executive branch of government, in fact from the highest office in the land, a declaration that the multiple exchange rates that the country has operated for several decades now has to go. Is this a welcome development? And of course, after that, we'll be looking at how practicable it is. Let's begin with Professor Uche Waleke.
Well, thanks so much, Kinsley. I will start by saying it's a welcome development. You noticed that following that pronouncement by the president, we saw the excitement, even right from the Eagle Square, the excitement, especially on the part of the markets, the investing public. So what we saw the following day, as a reaction to that statement, was that the stock market, for example, appreciated by 5.2%, quite remarkable. Our sovereign bonds also, gained yield. That means yield fell, and even in the parallel market, we also noticed some appreciation of the naira. So that will tell you that it's one measure that the markets generally appear to have welcomed. So I think it's a welcome development. And just as you rightly pointed out, this is something that has been with us over time. I recall since 86, as a matter of fact. Of course, before 86, we had exchange controls. And in 1986, you recall, as part of the structural adjustment program, market forces were, being allowed to determine exchange rate under the first tier foreign exchange market. We also had the second tier, foreign exchange market. Up till even 1995, the market was further liberalized. But I also recall that in 1996, there was cause again to operate dual exchange rates, a fixed exchange rate pegged to the dollar, I think at 22 naira to the dollar at the time, and another window too that was largely market determined. Between 2002 and 2015 or thereabouts, okay, within the framework of market determined exchange rate, we also experimented a number of methods, including the retail Dutch auction system, where bids were largely customer based, and the wholesale Dutch exchange system, where the central bank sold to banks and who bought on their own account and then resold to the customers. But all of that changed significantly in 2016. So from 2016, these multiple exchange rates have become pronounced, such that at that time we had as many as 5 windows. 5, namely, we had the one for the investors and exporters, because we wanted to, incentivize investments and, of course, exports at a higher rate. And then we also had the secondary market intervention sales window, meant for raw materials, meant for petroleum imports, okay, meant for certain, agric imports. And we also had the SME, that's the third one, the SME window, where the importers were needed to film from queue. And then for those who were importing goods not more than $20,000, they were meant to access that window. That's the SME, window. And then, of course, we had the window for invisibles. Invisibles referring to BTAs, basic business travel allowance, personal travel allowances, education, medical tourism. That's the fourth window. And of course, the budget one, the one we used for public sector budget. So we had these windows over time. And the point I also need to make here is that there are also justifications for having these multiple windows. A number of literature that I've seen on multiple exchange rates also provide justification. Why do countries have multiple exchange windows? Okay. A particular study I saw looked at 25 countries that have been doing that. And the reasons adduced ranged from, influencing budget spending. Okay, you needed to have multiple exchange rates, to be a lower exchange rate, to influence budget spending, so that budget spending doesn't go haywire. That's why over time we've had, a budget benchmark, for, running the budget. Yeah. Okay, then there's also the issue of inflation. You wouldn't want the prices of essential commodities, particularly in an import-dependent economy, you wouldn't want their prices to also go overboard. You wouldn't want galloping inflation. So you also have to introduce some lower exchange rate for those imports. And that's why we had that the secondary market intervention sales for raw materials, critical raw materials. Okay, and then another reason for also having multiple exchange rates is that you want to also have some higher exchange rates, okay, because you want to incentivize remittances, diaspora remittances, and you also want to incentivize investors. So these are some of the reasons that countries, use to justify multiple exchange rates. And in our own case, these are also the reasons we have used to, justify them. It's just that even according to those studies, multiple exchange rates are not supposed to be permanent. They're supposed to be temporary, okay? You use them to correct balance of payment issues, and then you also have a plan to exit and at some point, unify. So why I said this is a welcome development is that time has come since 2016. Okay, time has come for us to unify. We have been operating multiple exchange rates for justifiable reasons. Okay, but it is now time to unify these exchange rates, for obvious reasons. We want to avoid, round tripping has been going on. We also want to avoid over-invoicing and under-invoicing.
We'll come to that. You're going deeper into the conversation. Okay. We'll come to that. Let's bring in the other guests so that we can have their opening statement. Kingsley threw a question to all of you. Is it a welcome development?
Well, as Prof has extensively explained, it's truly a welcome development, particularly because of the peculiarity of our country. The major challenge with the multiple exchange rate is the indiscipline, arbitrage, round tripping, and unfortunately we'll be unable to control that.
Can you break it down so that our viewers can understand? It's sort of too technical.
Okay, the fact is because of these
windows yes.
The multiple exchange windows, like as he has explained, provides opportunities for maybe graduated or different rates at those markets. And like I said, I've attributed that to indiscipline because ordinarily every exchange rate window that's used is targeted at particular objective or a particular market. He has mentioned the SMEs windows for small businesses, which form the bedrock of most economies generally. So they needed to be propped up, so to say. Now we also have the incentivized window, the R&E, where exporters and investors are expected to bring in, and then they have the incentive to come in. And then the other rates. But the fact is, this issue of round tripping is that people, because of these differentials, people get from this market and move to the next one. And that particularly is what has distorted it, so that it ended up even, not achieving the objective for which it was actually set up. For instance, if you move it from SMEs, and take it to where you can just get the differentials, automatically the objective of propping up those SMEs to create jobs and boost the economy is defeated. So largely it's that indiscipline that has made it such an anathema now that people are seeing it as negative. Because like you said, there are justifications and they are very noble objectives. So largely this unification, we have to give it's just like the issue of the subsidy on fuel. So largely, if you are unable to checkmate the abuse, ending up defeating the objective, you might as well, simply close those opportunities, those avenues that create this arbitrage and the abuses that, have undermined the objective for which all these different windows have been set up. And
to have a single window.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mohammed Ali Baba. We'll come back to you. Sure. Let's have your take on this. Yes, the view on the floor is that it is desirable to get rid of it. Why should we get rid of it?
Well, I would agree that it's a welcome development, but I will say that with some reservation. It was an inauguration speech. So what is unifying the exchange rate mean? We all know that there is a black market that's about 750, 780.
A parallel market, would like to say.
Okay, yes. So you call it parallel market, but we all know as economists, we know in every economy there's a black market. You can't.
As a national public broadcaster,
we don't demonize
our color.
So it's a parallel market. There's a parallel market exchange rate that is about 750, 780. My colleagues have actually really explained that even within the official window, there are various tiers in terms of pricing. So if the president says, okay, my government will unify exchange rate, I as an economist, I will wait to see what that really translates into. Is he suggesting that they will close the gap, the difference between the official rate and the parallel rate? Or is he simply talking about collapsing all rates into one? That is one aspect. The second aspect I would really be keenly interested in, and I'm waiting, is, all right, so if you intend to unify the exchange rate, how do you intend to do that? Because that's very, very fundamental. if you're planning to simply devalue the currency, let's say just for analysis purpose, today the parallel market is 750. And if you think by taking the parallel market to say 800, you think that you've closed or taken away the issues, I think it will not be a good thing. So I would say yes, it's a welcome development. The intention to unify our exchange rate is very, very critical. One, because outside looking into Nigeria, an investor will have a big problem bringing in his money, because he's not going to bring it just to bring it for eternity. He would intend to take it out at some point. The real challenge with that is that when you bring in money, say even at 750 at parallel rate, the challenge you'll have with the exchange regime and environment in Nigeria, you will be wondering if I'm going to take it in the next 2 years. You don't really know at what rate you're going to take it. So even if you're bringing it for an investment, the challenge you will have is that if I make a profit, say 10% profit, what will be the exchange rate differential the day I'm taking my money out? So these are all the fundamental problems. It's not just how much is the exchange rate. Therefore, it's really a welcome development if you're going to unify it. But for me, the real importance is that unification should be in such a way that it will bring stability and predictability. And that is why I don't support the idea that it will be a devaluation. If you think that by devaluing you will unify, what will simply happen, which is what has been happening, we've actually devalued the currency. I think from 199 to, I know that there was a point we devalued it to 305, 360. What has happened is that the parallel market keeps moving forward. Just the analogy I give is a human being with his shadow. If you intend to run, you would see that your shadow will run faster than you. If you stop, it stops. So that I see is the relationship. So my conclusion, I agree with my colleagues, it's a welcome development that you as a leader wants to unify the exchange, but how you do it is very, very important.
Okay, thank you so much for all gentlemen for your opening comment. We hear that our Zoom network from Lagos is ready, and we have my guest, Chief Executive Officer Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises and former DG Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Mudai Yusuf. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Yes, guests in the studio have been talking about, the unification of the exchange market, and we asked them this question: is it a welcome development? What's your take on that?
Yeah, of course, I agree with them. It's a welcome development because one of the biggest distortions that we have had in the economy over the last few years has been the distortion in the foreign exchange market. It's a distortion because we are dealing with a market where the price was fixed at a rate that we don't have the capacity to meet the demand. So what has happened is that we have resorted to administrative allocation of foreign exchange, because the official rate is around 460 or 462 or 465. The parallel market rate is over 700, 740, 750. So because the CBN cannot meet the demand at the rate of that 460, there's a big gap between the demand and the supply. Therefore, we had to resort to administrative allocation or rationing. And in this environment and in many other environments, once you begin to ration or to administratively allocate a scarce resource, you create a major problem for the economy. First, you create a major transparency problem, which is what we have presently. Over 80% of the operators in the economy today are not getting the foreign exchange at 460. So what we have seen is the emergence of a lot of middlemen, commission agents, brokers, who are making a whole lot of money by moving money from the official window and selling it at the parallel market window. The real entrepreneurs, most of them are not getting it at that rate. So there's a whole lot of problem in the foreign exchange market. It's not transparent because of this challenge of multiple exchange rates. And it is what has manifested in some of the very embarrassing situations that we have seen. For instance, in the case of the airlines, the trapped funds. Nigeria is now reported to be the country with the biggest amount of airlines trapped or blocked funds, with over $800 million that foreign airlines cannot repatriate. That is why Emirates had to pull out of Nigeria. Then we have the situation of foreign investors, foreign direct investors, foreign portfolio investors, who cannot take their money out. So the multiple exchange rate system has created a major liquidity problem in the foreign exchange market. So much so that many people, many investors that want to bring in money into the economy are not bringing in money. So the capital importation had collapsed. Foreign direct investment, all this importation of funds have dropped drastically. Because how do you convince an investor to bring in money at 460 when he does his or her business and wants to go out? He cannot get the money at 460. It's a major discouragement, it's a major disincentive to inflow of foreign capital into the economy. So it has worsened the crisis in the foreign exchange market. So I welcome the idea of the president about the unification of the exchange rate. And I must say that practically all the major political parties during the campaign promised that they are going to do away with this multiple exchange rate. It may not be practical to have a single exchange rate, but we should not have a margin that is as wide as this. This is possibly the country with the highest margin between the official rate and the parallel market rate. No, just look at it. If we're able to move $1 million, for instance, you have the connection, we're able to move $1 million from the official window at 460, and you sell it even say at 700. That's close to 300 million naira that you have made without doing anything, just because you have the connection. See, major disincentive to entrepreneurship and to investment. So it's something that has to go and has to go very quickly. There are two major subsidies that have been a problem to this economy over the last 8 years. The fuel subsidy and the foreign exchange subsidy. Those are the two biggest subsidies. It's denying the economy of inflow of capital, it's discouraging investment, it's perpetrating corruption in the foreign exchange market. It's not allowing the economy to grow. Talk to exporters. I know of many exporters who are reluctant to bring in their export proceeds. How can an exporter labor to get foreign exchange? And you say the exporters will bring the foreign exchange at 460. Will they bring it when they'll be losing almost 250 naira on a dollar? So that is why the CBN have been struggling with enforcing the exporters to bring in their foreign exchange. There's no disclosure. So we don't even have proper data on the amount of foreign exchange, on the amount of export that is taking place in the economy, especially non-oil exports. Some of them take their export to Cotonou to go and export. Because the current foreign exchange arrangement is discouraging even the exporters. In spite of the RT200 that CBN said it puts in place. How can you put in place a program? I'm talking of the RT200 now. The RT200 will give you 65 naira on a dollar.
Dr. Musa Yusuf, let's pause you in the meantime and get back to the studios. We will return to you to crunch the implications of the distortions that have been occurring in the forex market for many years now. Back to the studios. I want to bring in again the former director of the central bank, Mohammed Ali Baba. Professor Uche Uwaleke indicated the multiple exchange rate windows that we have. And then he also explained the rationale for creating those multiple exchange rate windows. But good intentions, the practice and the reality produced unsalutary results that, of course, everyone is also talked about, and Dr. Mudai Yusuf was equally analyzing. Round tripping and all kinds of distortions that we are seeing. If we knew that round tripping was going on, arbitrage was going on, where the authorities are asleep while all of this was happening and the distortion was going on.
Well, so well, as you notice, I'm a former director, not substantive, because I expected the officials to be here. But we wouldn't say the authorities are sleeping. Efforts are actually being made to checkmate some of this. That's why we have banking supervision department, and that actually regularly goes to examine some of these banks, because most of these transactions actually go through the banks. And then regularly they are flagged, and there are penalties that are regularly imposed. But generally, it's not everything that you'll be able to track. Dr. Muda has actually alluded to that. For instance, the IIU window that expect exporters to bring in their proceeds, because of these disincentives he was talking about, hardly brings it. Of course, the measures have been taken to track what goes out. But coming in, I mean, so long as they don't remit it through the official exchange, tracking will be a problem. What do you do to such? So the penalties are there, but tracking and, of course, imposing those kind of penalties can only happen under a disciplined environment. So it's not as if like I said, we're sleeping. But ultimately, like I alluded earlier with the fuel subsidy, when you are unable to checkmate abuses, I think the right way, I mean, the only available option is to actually to plug those holes that creates these abuses, and hope that you will be able to achieve some of the
Juma, sorry, I want to pose the same question to Professor Uche Uwaleke. Look, how could we have had, or how can we have, because it's ongoing, this apparent regulatory failure to say these were the intendments for creating these multiple windows? Those intendments are not being realized, and it's an open secret that this is what is going on. I know that it's not every thief that you can catch, but you just catch one or two, and then you make an example of them. So how do we deal with this regulatory failure? Regulatory failure is there. Everyone is seeing the hurt. I mean, Mudai Yusuf is speaking from the point of view of somebody who'd been with LCCI, that is Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the consequences that are there for all. Why did we allow this to just continue?
Kinsley, I go back to some of those studies that I read. Okay, the major problem we have with this multiple exchange rates also has to do with ensuring that this round tripping doesn't happen, and that is why a major cost to that is the fact that you also need to do monitoring at a very high cost. The only way price discrimination succeeds is when you are able to block people from accessing various markets, again for arbitrage purposes. Okay, assessing markets simultaneously in order to make a profit. So the cost of monitoring that is very high. But I started by also telling you that there are benefits associated with multiple exchange rates, and at the time they were introduced, there appeared to be justification for introducing them. It's just that we have allowed it to linger for too long. Multiple exchange rates are not supposed to linger. They're supposed to be a temporary measure to correct an anomaly. The question you asked me is akin to asking also why haven't we been able to also check smuggling of petroleum products, okay? Because that's also one of the issues we are facing with this oil subsidy. Why haven't we been able to check petroleum products? We have customs, okay? There are things that are not as easy as we think. In this country, we have vast borders, and it's difficult to say you want to use customs to check smuggling. So the best thing is to try to nip that problem in the bud. So let's not forget the fact that the major objective of exchange rate management has to do with maintaining the value of your currency, as overarching, and closely attached to that too has to do with you want to maintain strong external reserve. It is these two objectives that, in my view, that have also guided the the experiments we've had over time. In 1992, I recall, we actually came to the point of floating the naira. The naira was practically floated in 1992. But what happened 2 years later? In 1994, there was policy reversal. We had to also go back to trying to also manage particularly the demand side because of the pressure, okay, on the reserves, on forex. So the point I'm making is that in 2016, when these multiple exchange windows came in, were introduced, they were introduced on the back of sudden drop in forex receipts.
But my question, Prof, is this: you introduce a policy, and down the road, you find that there are abuses. The earlier justifications were noble in the first place, but if you then find that there are abuses and that the consequences are even now creating even more challenging issues for you to handle, what do? Do you keep the windows? Because as we speak, the windows continue to exist.
Yes.
The challenges are there.
That's why we now said. That's why we now said it's time we stopped it. It's time we also moved over to another regime. It's time we unify the exchange. And by the way, unifying the exchange rates is with respect to the official windows. Not, I don't think the idea is to unify the official window, with the parallel market rate. Just as he said, it's like a shadow. The parallel market rate will always shift because two factors actually cause what happens in the parallel market rate. One is the scarcity of forex. Once there is scarcity on the supply side, you are bound to have a parallel market. And the second one is bureaucratic bottlenecks. Once you have these two, scarcity and bureaucracy, people are bound to also patronize the parallel market. So the parallel market will always be there. It's a permanent feature of virtually every economy. But what is important is for us to see how we can close that parallel premium, that gap between the official and the parallel market. Because if that gap is still there, even when you finish unifying your exchange rates and there is a gap, a premium, a wide premium, an incentive between the official and the parallel market will continue to be patronized. Let me say this too. People have made this case, just as they're also making with respect to oil subsidy. Jack off oil subsidy in one fell swoop. I don't support the idea of jacking it off in one fell swoop. That's one. The same argument is also being extended to this unification. We should unify it in one step. Okay. Again, based on studies. Okay. There are three issues that usually arise when you are unifying exchange rates. The first one is when you want to unify, what exchange rate type are you going to use? Is it going to be fixed at the end of the day? Or are you going to allow a crawling exchange rate system? A crawling exchange rate is where you have a band within which the exchange rate will fluctuate. Or are you going to have completely floated? The second issue has to do with what is even the appropriate exchange rate when you say you want to unify. What is going to be the equilibrium price? Because as we speak now, the impression is that the naira is overvalued. So when you're going to unify, what is going to be the appropriate exchange rate? Yes. And the third issue, I said there are three issues. How is it going to be a one-step process or a gradual process? Again, from those studies, a one-step process, when you do it in one step, it has always caused in many countries business failures, high rate of unemployment, high rate of inflation. Because if you unify exchange rate today in one step, and you jack off oil subsidy again in one step, I bet you're going to have galloping inflation in this country.
Yeah.
And the distortion we are trying to avoid, will happen. And that is why I recommend a gradual process of unification, okay, which, as I said, studies have shown that is, what appears to have a minimal, distortionary impact on the economy.
Yes, indeed, Professor Oleke, you've raised some pertinent questions, and Mohammed Unua Shehu, some analysts have also argued that there are fundamentals of the economy that needs to be improved for the country to be positioned to unify the exchange rate. What are these fundamental issues?
Thank you. Kingsley asked my two colleagues a question that you implement a policy and you see that the desired result is not what's panning out. So what do you do? I think the honest answer, if we're going to tell ourselves, it's one, the policies are actually reactionary policies, which comes back to what she said. Really, the issue that we're dealing with the exchange rate are fundamental issues to start with. He said, I think it's the gentleman that joined us through Zoom.
Dr. Yusuf.
Yes, Dr. Yusuf. Look, if you don't have enough exports, and we all know Nigeria almost imports, technically speaking, everything. There's no magic, there's no policy, there's no game you play where you are not going to have issues with your exchange rate. And therefore, all the policies actually that were implemented, sincerely speaking, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, it's like you're fiddling with something that really, at the end of the day, you can only generate fire. Because if the demand is not, demand is more than supply. And what you decide to do is to say, okay, no, I'm going to select some few people to whom I'm going to be allocating the FX to. You're only going to create more problems. So the fundamentals of any economy that relates to foreign exchange market is number one, the balance of payment. That balance of payment is derived from your balance of trade. What do you export? What do you import? That's fundamental. But beyond the arithmetic of imports and exports, the components of what you import, what you export, is also very, very fundamental to determine what your exchange rate is. Take Nigeria, for instance. The issue really is not really a very complicated issue. What is our major export? Is crude oil. What's our major import? It's petroleum products, really. These are the things that are creating all these, what do you call it, all this tension. And the truth is, if we look at things, your major export is crude oil. Your major input is petroleum products. And in economics, there are things we call non-tradable items. What is a non-tradable item? Items that does not make economic sense for you to take anywhere or go and buy from anywhere. I give you, let's take an analogy. Let's say you are in a village. And in the village, every farm most likely will do maize. You have like 2 silos of maize. Okay, it's there in your silo. And then what you as the head of the house will do, you enter aeroplane to go to Lagos to go and buy a maize flour. Does it make economic sense? It doesn't. Number one, the quantum, the size of the product itself, make it non-tradable item, because to move it, the cost of movement is high. Number two, you have the economic advantage, because it's there in your backyard. All you have to do is refine it. So these are the fundamentals. All these things that we're talking about, the policy, it's, in all honesty, just gimmicks. Because another fundamental issue is the corrupt system. And I'm not going to tender any apology, because we keep being politically correct. Nigeria is a corrupt system. And the real price of corruption, it's not really the money people take. People don't get it. is the fact that the policies you implement, because the system is corrupt, and every system needs to have a check and balance. A car must have a brake if it's going to function as a system. A car without brake, it's a malfunctioning system, we all agree. So in a system and in economy, there has to be a brake. But if the system is corrupt, you put a policy that, okay, this money is supposed to be dealt with this or into this. What will happen is that the people who are supposed to be the check and balance in that system, because it's a corrupt system, they would see the benefit. And
of importing.
Yeah, so for instance, if I'm a staff of CBN, okay, he said there's a huge gap. It's actually about 70%. So in Nigeria, if you get $1 million, it means you're going to get 70% of that $1 million. So what you're going to put $700,000 in your pocket. People are going to be people till eternity. We will have incentives. So what will happen is that if the fundamentals are not dealt with, the system is not going to function from a corruption perspective.
So how can we improve the foreign?
But let me just want to reiterate that, one, the first thing we need to deal with the economic fundamentals of imports and exports. We need to begin to look at what we export and what we import. That's number one. Number two, we need to look at the fact that as long as the system is corrupt, the economics will not be correct. So if you ask me, the fundamental of exchange rate, these are the two.
Okay,
Yes.
Inua, thanks for your proposition, but the response will also be immediately for you to address.
Okay.
We are already taking head on the issue of importation of refined petroleum products.
Yes.
Mudai Yusuf tells us that we don't even have a clear picture of what we export. So it is easy for all of us, those who are in the know and those who are on the margins, to say that our major export is crude oil. But it is possible that there are all kinds of exports going on, but because of the fear of repatriation and declaration of your proceeds at the official window, then you have non-documentation. So do we have if we have this distortion and therefore an unclear picture of what we actually export, how do all of this fit into your proposition?
Okay, thank you for that also, because it's also a very, very fundamental. That's true. I know of exporters who would rather package their container, take it. In fact, their export companies are registered in Niger Republic for many benefits. Once you finish your container, you move it to Niger Republic. Niger Republic, in the eye of the world, is a poor country. So there are some rebates your export would benefit from. That's one. But obviously also, I mean, in terms of processing, the level of corruption in Niger is not as much as here. So the speed with which your transaction will go through, and on top of it, of course, somebody mentioned it. So when the monies come in also, you don't want your money coming into Nigeria, because which is the point you're making. So yes, it's a valid issue, but if you ask me, I think it's not significant, okay? Because again, I go back to economics. That's what I know. Again, the economics of it, if you're let's say you're a major oil dealer, you're exporting crude oil in Nigeria, it will not make sense for you to carry that oil to Niger Republic because it's significant. So what is happening is that it's a small pocket here and there, but it's not significant, it's not major. So there it's there, but it's not major. The major exports that we do today, the records are there, because it's not just about remittance, but the NXP forms are there. I mean, the records are there.
That is for those that declare.
Yes, those that don't declare are really not a significant part.
Number.
Yes.
All right, Inua Yashew, thank you very much for your perspective. Let's return to Dr. Mudai Yusuf, still with us via Zoom. If I can see you on the screen, then I'm sure that you're still with us. Dr. Mudai Yusuf, two issues I want to put on the table, but the first again is to have recourse to our historical experience. You will remember before the mid-1980s, most of the houses in southwest Ikoyi, particularly on Awolowo Road, were residential. And then you just had banks springing up left, right, and center, and businesses before the merger of the banks springing up. And one of the things it was alleged at that time that the banks were doing, everybody was going for forex, the same issues, round tripping, arbitrage. It was rife in the 90s, and then of course the mismanagement of the banks also followed with the misbehavior of banking directors and so on and so forth. And then we had the failed banks and the various trials that went on. If we had that experience of round tripping and arbitrage over 30 years ago, how come we couldn't bring it as part of our historical lessons in the regulation of these multiple exchange windows that we have operated and that have also caused this kind of catastrophic economic conditions that we are discussing?
Well, the policy regime in the foreign exchange markets where arbitrage exists provides, just as you have said, a lot of opportunities for a lot of people who have the connections. The point is that it is an environment with a lot of vested interests. And these vested interests are very powerful interests. Because one of the easiest ways, in fact, it's perhaps the easiest way to make money in Nigeria today is in this FX environment. I mean, you just talk to people in the bank. You can easily recognize those who work in the foreign exchange department and those who work in other departments. You can tell. So there's so much money to be made. And when people are making so much money, it allows the system to continue to linger because of selfish interests. And the entire economy continues to suffer. That is what is happening. I'm talking about fundamentals. Exchange rate is a price. Any price in any economy is driven or determined by the supply and the demand. The problem with the current system is that we are making it difficult for the supply side to grow. At the inception of the R&E window, there was a point that it was the autonomous funds that were sustaining the foreign exchange markets. Not even the crude oil fund that is coming from the CBN. At that time, the CBN was also buying from the market because it was almost like a free float. A lot of funds were coming. The market was very liquid, so that the CBN didn't even have to be funding the market. The CBN at the point was even buying from the market because the rate was a market rate. We cannot continue to have an economy where only the CBN will be providing almost 90% of the foreign exchange. It's not sustainable. That is why we are having all this crisis. So to boost the supply side, we need to unify the exchange. And I don't imagine any major disruption that this will cause. In the past, some of my colleagues in the studio have been talking about the fact that it's like a moving shadow or something. It depends on the way you manage the macroeconomic environment. If you manage the economic environment in such a way that you have high level of money supply, you have high liquidity in terms of the naira liquidity, of course, like many other things, the prices will be moving up because you have excess liquidity in the system. You have high deficit. You are pumping money through the central bank. There is money printing and all of that. So it's a macroeconomic effect that affects all prices, whether prices of goods or prices of things like foreign exchange, because exchange rate itself is a price. But if you moderate inflation, you moderate money supply, and you unify, you are not likely to continue to have this kind of moving wide gap between the official rate and the parallel market rate. I mean, diaspora funds to the economy by estimates is over $20 billion. We cannot underestimate these things. Right now, I can tell you for many businesses, especially SMEs and the rest of them, a lot of foreign exchange transactions are taking place outside the country. People who open Naira accounts here, they pay the Naira equivalent, they do their transactions abroad, and they bring in their goods. A whole lot of that is happening because of the distortion that has been created in the economy. Just because some people are making a lot of money. It's just like this fuel subsidy thing. So we need to look at fundamentals. And the way to stabilize it is for the CBN to intervene as and when necessary through the supply side, not by fixing the exchange rates. If you continue to fix it, you continue to have this problem. I mean, even the mere announcement by the president during his inauguration that he was going to unify the exchange rate was already having a lot of effects in the international bond market concerning our bonds. It was already reflecting even in the local stock market. Professor Waleke is a capital market expert. He can testify to that. Portfolio flows in the Nigerian stock market has practically dried up. And they are very critical to even boosting our stock market just because of this distortion in the forex market. And I can tell you, the unification of the exchange cannot create as much shock as the fuel subsidy removal.
Indeed, Dr. Mudai.
The fuel subsidy removal is a much more difficult thing to deal with.
Yes, Dr. Mudai, we'll get back to that on reforms that the CBN will have to put in place, just like the World Bank asked them to, so that the windows can close them, and they will now have, close down the multiple windows for foreign exchange. We'll come back to that right after this break. Do stay.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible.
As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress.
Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
Your skill is key to your professional growth in the competitive broadcast media industry. Take advantage of the following programs specially packaged by NTA Television College Jaws to upgrade your skill. Marketing in the era of digital broadcast. Date 13th June to 23rd June 2023, 2 weeks. Drama production workshop. Date 3rd July to 21st July 2023, 3 weeks. Intermediate online news reporting skills. Date 24th July to 11th August 2023, 3 weeks. The course fee for the 2-week course is 120,000 naira, while the fee for the 3-week course is 150,000 naira only. Accommodation inclusive. All courses will hold at NTA Television College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jaws. For further inquiries, please call 0803-079-5335 or 0806-980-9807. NTA Television College Jaws, training you to be the best you want to be. Registrar Announcer.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Today, faith and destiny join together to place the touch of human progress in our very hands. We dare not let it slip. We lift high this touch so that it might shine on every household and in every heart that calls itself Nigeria. We hold the beam aloft because it lights our path with compassion, brotherhood, and peace. May this great light never extinguish.
Right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our 4 guests are still with us here, 3 in the studios, and Dr. Mudai Adeyemi with us via Zoom from Lagos. There's an issue, a conceptual issue, if you may, that I would like Muhammad Ali Baba to address, the former director of the central bank. When we face challenges usually from the parallel exchange rate, there was a time speculation was driving it, 900, almost 1,000. We also had the Bureau de Change operators who, of course, participated in our conversation. Dr. Gwadabe, who is the president, is a frequent guest on Good Morning Nigeria. One of the responses we always hear is that, look, transactions on the parallel exchange rate are small compared to transactions on the official exchange rate. If that is so, why are we then splitting our heads over all of this? And why are we still having the headache?
Yeah, thank you. You see, the prominence that the parallel exchange has taken is we've had that conversation. It's like the tail wagging the dog, because like has been highlighted, this almost maximum maybe 10-15% of the transaction. But I still wonder, is the sensationalism? I don't know whether we say blame or ascribe it to the media. The emphasis, you realize that the media, they say when dog bites man, it's no news, but when man bites dog. So the emphasis on this, on the parallel market, I think is disproportionate. But unfortunately, even now that we're talking of unification, the impression being created is as if we'll be heading towards the parallel market. And that's what brought the issue of a moving target, because you can hardly, checkmate the parallel market. But significantly too, what gives me cause for hope is the fact that the most significant use for our forex largely is this oil and gas that we're talking about. And if with the coming on stream of Dangote and the expected resumption of the other refineries, we expect that, and by and large, because of the significance of the oil importation, a large percentage of our official forex actually goes to that. So if we are satisfying our oil needs locally, I think that significant portion that goes to oil, it will be available for the other sectors that genuinely need them. So the need in terms of unification, because that has been the challenge now, are we moving that way or this way? I expect that if genuinely we are trying to target the economy, and that the most significant users of this forex, the oil, has been settled, then we should have enough to meet some of the most fundamental and basic demands that will impact the economy. So the tendency of unifying it backwards, I think, is actually more germane to me personally than expecting it to move towards that moving target that it will never catch up with.
And that moving target, gentlemen, we've always had you.
I will support him on that. I have a different perspective from where he's coming. Yes, I totally agree, it's the tail of the dog. Okay? But you see, the foreign exchange market is a complex market. It's not a product or a produce market. There's a significant element of speculation. Okay? So what you are dealing with in the foreign exchange market is the fact that we are not dealing with only today. The market is driven by what will happen tomorrow. So every player in that market is looking at not what I need the FX today, it's looking at what will happen tomorrow. Why? Because there's what is called an arbitrage opportunity. So if I have $1 million today, and if there's any sign in the environment that this thing will move, even if it is by 1 naira or 2 naira, a reasonable business person, if he really doesn't need to do it right now, he's going to hold on to these dollars. And what would be the impact of that? The supply into that market, therefore, that $1 million that you will have taken to the market to sell, what will happen is that that supply is taken out. And then everybody begins to see that once the supply is falling down, everybody begins to hold it. So the reality is, I agree with him only at the tail end, that because it's even, in my opinion, it's about 5% of the market.
Okay.
So what I think really is the issue is simply because that is what everybody believes he can easily go to. Because you can't say, I can go to the CBN.
Sorry, Juma, let's also remind ourselves, we've been around for a while. 10 years ago in this same economy, if you went to Zone 4, the parallel, where you had the parallel traders,
market, yes,
the exchange rate was stable for a number of years.
Yes.
Whenever there was any shift, not more than 2 naira or 3 naira, you had it. It was stable.
You know why?
Hang on, I've not finished. It was stable for many years. And then let's also remind ourselves that until the presidential primaries of June last year, it was a year ago, the exchange rate at the parallel market was just about 600. And then suddenly, we had all kinds of stories. Now we say the 750. At some point, of course, it was climbing 800 and so on and so forth. So, what is this? This speculation or just the same mafia that you have in the oil subsidy regime that operates in this environment?
Inflation, if I may come in.
Yeah, you may come.
Yes, rising inflation also has a role to play. In an economy where you have rising inflation, the purchasing power of the naira weakens, and then you now find a lot more people now doing currency substitution, looking for dollars to now serve as a store of value. Okay, so that's also where that speculative activity, comes in. And you mentioned 10 years ago. 10 years ago, again, remember, the exchange rate in the parallel market is also influenced one way or the other by the Bureau de Change. Okay, the central bank was funding Bureau de Change, allocating forex to Bureau de Change, and part of that liquidity was also flowing into the parallel market. So it's about liquidity. It's also about, just as has been said, it's a price, it's demand and supply that is actually fueling it. But my worry in all this unification, as I said, I support it, but my worry is how? If we do a one-step unification process, what is going to be the impact of that on our budget? For example, the 2023 budget that is still on. What is going to be the impact on that on our public debt? Yes, we service public debt in dollars, but in terms of reporting, we also report in naira. Today, public debt is 46.2 trillion. That includes the external component converted at the official exchange rate. So it has implication for the public spending in the budget. Already the budget is based on, I think, 432 naira per dollar. It has implication on debt. It's going to have implication on even the import of raw materials. I told you there's a window for raw materials. So even the little that these some of them are getting, okay, will be affected, because by the time you unify, you're going to unify at a higher exchange rate. Okay, more or less devaluation. And okay, come to think of it, why I'm saying that a one-step unification may not be feasible. When the president announced that, of course, he stated the obvious, oil subsidy was gone. Immediately, we saw that, happen. He also mentioned that the central bank must work towards unifying, exchange rate. And then, a few days after, we read that Daily Trust reported that exchange rate had been devalued to.
But that was denied. No,
I'm just saying. Yes, I'm just saying. A few days they reported that it had been done by 6:30, and the CBN quickly came out to say no, that we didn't devalue. That will tell you that the unification of exchange rates, may not be an event, may not be a one-day thing. I think, in my view, yes, it should be a gradual process. And in all these reforms, it's important we try to balance it in such a way that the distortion on the economy will not be, so monumental. You can see the two major reforms coming in at the same time, as I said, the oil subsidy removal and this exchange rate unification. There is no doubt about it that these two have the potential to raise inflation, and I've always said, for a country like Nigeria, creeping inflation is preferred to galloping inflation. By the time inflation, becomes galloping, poverty rate is rising, even output is likely to also fall as consumers adjust spending, and all that. So it's important that we recognize that these reforms must be planned, must be sequenced, and that is why I am not in support of a one fell swoop with respect to the unification of exchange rates, and also with respect to the subsidy removal.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring in Dr. Mudai back into the conversation. Dr. Owaleke is talking about reforms, and the World Bank has advised the federal government to, through reforms, to strengthen the economy and restore microeconomic stability. Let's talk about these reforms and how it will affect the common Nigerian who intends to go into business and to earn money.
Well, two major reforms that both the IMF and the World Bank and many economists domestically have consistently called for are reforms in the oil and gas sector, principally the removal of subsidy. That leg of reform, at least something has been done. The second major reform is the reform of the foreign exchange markets. The process is still on. Of course, there are also needs for reforms in our budget, reforms in our trade policy, reforms in our tax policy, expenditure processes, procurement processes. There are so many reforms that needs to happen, as we, try to fix the economy. Some of the reforms will have some shocks, no doubt, as you have seen with the subsidy removal. Some of them may not have so much shocks. But the whole essence of these reforms is to further stabilize the macroeconomic environment and to position the economy for growth, to position the economy for greater level of investment, to be able to inspire a lot more investors' confidence. Because right now, we have a major issue with investors' confidence. You can see in our oil and gas in the downstream sector, for instance, we haven't had major private investment for many years. We haven't seen private investment in refineries until recently when we had the Dangote refineries, all because of the policy environment in that sector. So now that a major step has been taken, we expect a lot more interest of private investors in that sector. The same thing with the forex. If we quickly accelerate the reforms in the sector, we are likely to see a lot more inflow of foreign capital. We need the inflow of foreign capital to strengthen our balance of payment position, to strengthen the currency, and to grow the economy and to also grow investment. Because it is difficult to attract quality investors into an economy with this kind of exchange rate management. Because what we are doing is micromanaging the foreign exchange market. You talked about the fact that the parallel market rate is a very minor or very small percentage of operations. Certainly not. If you talk to operators in the economy today and you tell them the operating exchange rate, over 70 or 80% of them will tell you that they don't have access to the official window. And there are many variance of this parallel market rates. It's not only the bureau de change. Even within the banking system, there are exchange rates that are as close as 700, 680, even within the banking system itself. So the issue is to align the official window to all of these rates, not just the bureau de change or all these guys who hang around the roads. No. And if you go to some banks, if you are engaging with them on this forex market, they on their own will even invite the bureau de change people to come and meet you in their bank. That shows the linkage even between the banking system and all this bureau de change. So all of these reforms are necessary for this economy to move forward and to inspire a lot more confidence, to be able to allow a lot more FDI, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio flows, and to also allow our people to export more confidently and repatriate their profits. So this is the importance of the reforms. And these reforms will also help us to stabilize the macroeconomic environment. It will help us to reduce the deficit. If you look at this foreign exchange market now, given the rate at which the CBN is selling to our new window, we are losing almost 4 trillion naira annually. This is money that should normally have come to the Federation account and help us to reduce all this deficit and this debt. So these are the reforms and these are the importance and significance of these reforms, which the current administration has started, but we need to move faster with the reforms.
Mudai Yusuf, thank you very much there for your perspective. I want to throw my last question to Muhammad Ali Baba. Listening to what Dr. Mudai Yusuf described and what some of us also know, those who need the forex cannot access it through any of the multiple exchange rate windows created officially, not the parallel market. And yet you find bankers and all kinds of unofficial persons who are moving. It's as if people are operating without rules and without consequences. How do we move away from this seeming lawlessness in the forex market?
Well, I agree. First and foremost, part of the challenge of the forex is actually availability. Shockingly, and I truly was shocked to have learned about the oil theft we're talking about. Till now, we have not met our targets. And supply actually is part of the problem. So rationing the supply, no matter, I don't know why his basis of statistics, but substantially within these official windows, those are actually needed get it. But because we are prioritizing, I've just mentioned the role of fuel importation. It's the most significant, and that is what takes a substantial part of it. So whatever is available is actually rationed across this, these windows. But it's not as if only the bankers, because even the beneficiaries themselves also patronize these same markets we're talking about. So it depends on discipline, but availability is critical. And apart from availability, I also emphasize the fact that with the incoming of local refining, I still expect that substantial part of what goes into oil and gas will be available for these same segments that actually are starved of funds at the moment. That is my point. And significantly too, we have been reading, heartwarmingly, that our export oil production is also increasing. We're trying to move towards that. Ultimately, like you said, by the time these reforms take root, perhaps alternative non-oil exports will also, not only open up, but also repatriation will come through the official rates. But I personally, like I said, still insist that moving towards the black market, the parallel market is not it, because it will be succumbing to tyranny of the minority, so to my own terms.
Okay.
And then, Juma,
yes,
I know that you're going to have the last word. Well, just to remind ourselves that when we also say that we are funding importation of refined petroleum products, that even the numbers around the imported petroleum products, those numbers are also questionable. So if those numbers are questionable, it means that the forex outgoings are equally questionable. If you say one customs and the NNPCA, they were disagreeing the other day whether it's 66 million liters we consume every day, or whether it's whatever number it is. So if you say you need to import 66 million liters for 32 days or whatever, and you bring the forex for that, and you don't actually get that, that's part of the leakage. So if forex is no longer available for such arbitrage, then so be it. Many will argue.
Yes,
I agree. In fact, significantly, somebody pointed out that when gas was deregulated, our so-called consumption dropped by 50%. And the same is likely to happen to PMS. Now that the subsidy has been withdrawn, the actual consumption rate will host well, because it's no longer attractive to actually, export to neighboring countries, because the arbitrage is shortened now. Therefore, we understand that there are protests in some of the neighboring countries with this withdrawal.
Okay. Okay, Mohammed Ali Baba, former director of CBN, thank you so much for coming. I'm sure that this conversation will continue in due time, because we've not really gone deep into the issue itself. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And Mohammed Inu, an economist and financial expert, as always, thank you for your insight into the conversation. And here in the studio, Professor Uche Waleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nasarawa State University. As always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Jumai.
Dr. Mudai Yusuf is the Chief Executive Officer, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE, and former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As always, we appreciate your input to the conversation. Thank you so much.
So that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We thank you for being with us. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Jumai Yusuf.